Firstly, Katrina, James and Gemma, can you tell me, thank you ever so much for talking to the Guildford Dragon News today. Can you tell me a little bit about your roles? Katrina.
Yeah, I'm the collections manager and I help to look after the council's collections across multiple sites.
James?
I sort of provide a non-specialist viewpoint and sort of provide political direction of what the heritage services at Guildford Borough Council should be doing.
And Gemma?
So I assist Katrina, so I also look after the collections. I also help with the exhibitions as well.
Okay, thank you. James, a question for yourself. It's a fantastic collection, it really is wonderful. I spoke to my wife this morning and I said, I'm going to do an interview about the art collection, and she said, I didn't know Guildford Borough Council had an art collection. So why do we have an art collection at all?
We very much have an art collection because it details the history of Guildford over the past sort of 250 years. It's very good at sort of documenting how the town has changed, how the borough has changed, and it allows people to sort of connect with the place which they're living in, and for people that are recently moving to the area, for them to actually to get an understanding of how the town has developed and how the town has changed over many years.
Okay. Katrina, there's about 500 odd pieces of artworks in the art collection, and with some fantastic, delightful paintings. Can you tell me about the art collection a little bit? You know, who are the main artists, if there are any main artists?
Yeah, of course.
What are the names people would recognise?
I think many people will have heard of an artist called John Russell, who's a member of the Royal Academy. He's an 18th century artist, mainly working in pastels, and he was a fantastically significant artist at the time. He was the court painter, he was producing works for all of the people across the country, a jobbing artist really, and he created a huge number of works. We actually have the largest collection of John Russell paintings anywhere in the world here, and they're predominantly portraits, and they're wonderful things. We also have works by local artist Henry James Sage that a lot of people probably will have heard of locally. Painted lots of local scenes, people might have met him. We have a work by an artist called Helen Allingham, who's really well known for painting beautiful cottage scenes, and her works are really sought after around the world. And we have a little Turner etching, and various other bits and pieces, but the main thing for me in this collection is the local artists and the people who lived here and visited here, and people like Cromer, who came in the 40s and painted what he saw, painted his family and his life in Guildford.
Okay, so how does the Guildford Art Collection compare to other towns? I mean, is this tiny? Is it huge? How does it compare to Woking, for instance? I don't know.
That's always the question. So Guildford's art collection I think of as small and perfectly formed. It's contained, it's neat. It was started originally in the 40s as a lending library, and our accessions register from that time has all of these replica paintings that list things like Picasso and Rembrandt, but they're copies, not real works. And eventually the artists, we started to add local artists and original works to the collection, and started to move things on and give the replicas away. And now it's just this really nicely contained reference library for Guildford artists or visiting artists who came and produced works about Guildford and Surrey. So in terms of size, it's not very big, but each piece tells a really important story for this place.
Is it a good one? Should Guildford be proud of it? Oh, do we do better than other towns in our art collection?
We should definitely be proud of it. It's a wonderful collection. We have to tell people about the Russell significance, particularly when we've got this biggest collection in the world. That's enormous.
Yeah.
The other organisations that collect Russells are people like the National Portrait Gallery, or the Met, for example, in New York. So
wow.
It's a really big thing for us, I think.
Okay, so Gemma, it's a question close to your heart, I suspect. There's going to be an exhibition in Guildford House starting on July 20th called People and Places.
That's right.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, sure. So the exhibition is going to focus in on some mini displays. So members of staff have chosen like a lead key picture from the art collection, and they've then used that to branch out and create a display around that. So we've chosen other artworks, whether they be pastels or oils or sculpture, and we've then paired those with objects from the museum collection. So we think of our collection as one whole collection rather than being an art collection and a local history collection. So the idea is that we pair the art with things that complement it and tell a story. Each mini display will tell new stories. It will shed light on different themes, different things that have happened in Guildford, and show that connection between art and the surroundings, really.
And we're going to have the John Russells, some of the John Russells.
Yes, so there's going to be
display.
2 mini displays which actually feature the Russells. So they've been, like I say, curated by members of staff. So one is my exhibition, and one is Lynn's mini exhibition. Who's
Guildford
the
House
exhibition
Gallery?
officer. It's at Guildford House Gallery.
I
Yes.
can't wait.
Good.
I'm really looking forward to that. So, what percentage? So we've got 550 pieces of work. What percentage is on display at any one time?
We think it's something in the region of 3 to 4% of the art collection. In terms of the museum collection, about 2%. That sounds small, but if you compare it to what the British Museum displays, they've got 2 million objects. They display about 80,000 of those, and that's only 1%. So we actually compare quite well to them, especially considering there's just 2 of us in the collections team. So we do work very hard.
I'm sure you do. And resources.
They certainly do.
James, we've heard about this unique art collection that we have, and the main exhibition space for the art collection. Things are loaned out, but the main exhibition space is Guildford House Gallery. Yes, is that an appropriate place for such a thing?
Not really, given the environmental sort of the atmosphere in the Guildford House Gallery in terms of the air atmosphere has got quite a lot of moisture, and then also the fact of the accessibility of the Guildford House Gallery, where it's not very accessible for people with physical disabilities. And the hope is, of course, is that when we get the new museum, once it sort of gets rolling, gets built, there's a space set aside there which is going to be very accessible for all different people from around the borough, and also there's going to be proper environmental sort of controls. That's the word I was trying to find. Different environmental controls that are going to be in there. That means that we can show pieces of work and pieces of art for a lot longer and a lot more by a sort of wider range of them.
Do we have a time scale for that? Is it way in the future, or is it?
We're going for the sort of the consultation bits at the moment, and also we've been showing whenever there's been like the stores in the town, we've been showing what the new museum's looking like. But it's looking like hopefully we can get the ball rolling in the next year or 2.
Exciting stuff.
It is very
really
exciting.
exciting.
Yeah.
So, Katrina, can you tell me a bit about where the collection is stored?
Yes, of course. We keep our collections in several places, one of them being this off-site store where we are today. We keep objects in transit stores, both at the museum and at the gallery. So they're places where objects come and go depending on what we're using them for. We also pretty much always have objects on display in other museums and galleries other than our own. So, for example, right now we have some objects in the Museum of London, at Kingston Museum, at the Cathedral, and various others in the area. Henley is a museum in Henley. We're planning a loan to the Lightbox later this year. So we send objects in and out of our own galleries, and we pretty much always have something from the Borough Art Collection on display at any one time, whether in our venues or in somebody else's.
Okay, so it's interesting stuff. So, Gemma, what are the plans for the collection? So we have this collection. Presumably, we develop it. Do we sell? Do we buy in? What's it all about?
We're always thinking about expanding the collection. We have people who come to us fairly frequently, actually, to donate things. So, for example, we had a family a few years ago, a very big family, who donated a really lovely piece of artwork, which had been in their family for many, many years. It was, they could have sold it, but they decided to give it to the museum.
Was that the Russell?
Really
That was,
important.
yes,
That was a
Sam
Russell.
Russell.
That was the Uncle Sam that you.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
wow,
the
that's
one that you saw
quite
us
something.
putting away
Okay.
earlier. Yeah.
So is there a program for developing the work, or is it responsive, or do you sort of? Are you planning for the next work? Are you planning for?
We always have an idea in mind of how we're going to add to the collection. So we have ideas of what we might want to add and what we might not want to add. Things that we might not want to add might include things that we already have in the collection. Or things that are similar. What we want to do is we want to collect things which are relevant to the local area, relevant to the collection that we already have, and things that are really lovely that people would
Have you
like
got
to
anything
see
in
too.
mind?
So we're always keeping an eye out. As you know, we do have a very big Russell collection. So, we're keeping an eye out for Russells that come around.
Do they come up?
They do.
They absolutely do.
He produced a huge catalogue of work. So yes,
Okay,
they
and
do
we've
come
got
up.
30 plus. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how many of them are hanging around? I mean, is there another
it's
1,000 around or something?
Many.
It's probably several hundred, I
Several
would
hundred.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So there's lots
okay.
in private
Yeah.
family collections still, and
So-
but we use a thing called the collections development policy, which guides what we will collect in areas. So it summarises what we have and our strengths and weaknesses, and it outlines things that we might like to acquire. So often we do collect responsibly, like you say, because people do come to us
Yeah.
pretty frequently. But with the museum redevelopment in mind, we've got some news stories we want to be able to tell. So things like the gaming industry and other really important things. And the gaming industry is a great one because it sits in my mind halfway between the museum collection and the art collection. It's a huge art as well as a technology
So
industry.
what are we collecting from the game industry? Or old Xboxes? Or what is it?
Well, things specific to Guildford. So Guildford is one of the most important centres in the world for games development and game design.
Yeah.
And we collected last year an oral history with Peter Molyneux, who's really the reason why a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
that industry exists here. We've also collected some video games of the game Fable,
Yeah.
which was also designed here by Lionhead Studios that he
Yeah,
set up
yeah.
with colleagues. So yeah, we're starting to develop that area now as
Okay,
well.
so we have all of these artworks here. How do you conserve them? How do you
Um,
make sure they're kept in wonderful condition?
Yeah, so one of the things we do first is we make sure that the stores are secure and in a decent environment. This store in particular we monitor all of the environments, and this one has a lovely, calm, flat level environment. So the main things we're worried about are light, humidity and temperature. We also store things properly and wrap them well, and we monitor them regularly. So we've been going through the last 5 years or so, we've been carrying out a huge inventory of all the collections to assess the condition of all the items so we can work out what needs repackaging, what might need to go to a conservator. And we don't have conservation ability in-house, it really is just the two of us, but we occasionally do send works out for conservation treatment, and we appoint a registered conservator to do those things.
Okay, so is there a lot of conservation work, or is the collection generally in good nick?
I think our collection's in really, really good condition overall. We don't really need to conserve an awful lot of it. The things that do go on display, very occasionally we need to, say, clean the glass on a painting which is going on display at the gallery, but that's things that we can do in-house.
Oh well,
Yeah.
so I mean that's good news again, isn't
It
it?
is. There's been a long history of really excellent care of this collection. Past curators have done a wonderful job looking after it, making sure we know where it is, and we benefit from that now.
Okay, so we have this wonderful collection. How much is it worth? How much is it worth in folding ones?
Yeah, it is invaluable. We don't tend to talk about numbers in terms of money signs and pounds. Things do have a value, but for us it's significance, historical significance, meaning to people, and that's really priceless. We don't tend to talk in numbers because it's sort of an ethical thing, but it's really not something that either of us think about very much at all.
No.
An object might be worth £1 in the open market or £1 million, and the £1 one might mean more to us for the story of Guildford than anybody else. So that's how we think about it.
Katrina, I've got you a quote from you
Okay.
to say I'm here to safeguard the collections to ensure that they are available for future generations, but they must be made available whenever possible, wherever possible. Otherwise, everything I do is without purpose.
Yep.
Are you succeeding in that aim?
I hope so. Only because we have a wonderful team, and so we look after the collections, but it's not just the two of us in the Heritage Service and James helping us and shouting from the rooftops for us. We've got many other members of staff that work in exhibitions and public events, and this summer, for example, Di, Melanie and Mark are doing lots of activities out and about in the town so that we make objects accessible at things like summer fetes and Warpleston's at this weekend, and various other things. So we don't just put things on display, we take them to people and we show them the objects in person.
What
or
more do you
online.
need? You must need more. Always
We'd
need
love
more.
more people.
God,
We love more people.
more people.
Yeah, we've got wonderful volunteers though. Our collections
We do,
volunteers
yeah,
are
we're very
superb.
lucky.
And our learning
How many volunteers do you have?
In the collections team we've got about 10 dedicated ones, but our actual list is probably closer to about 30 to 40 I think at the
Yeah.
moment, of volunteers that help with all sorts of things across the service.
Do you need more volunteers?
Oh, we often need volunteers, yeah.
So if someone was interested in helping you, they could contact Guildford Borough Council and offer themselves.
Yes, they
Would
could.
they need a qualification?
No. No, just a willingness to learn and pitch in, and we tend to ask people what kind of things they like doing, because not everybody likes, standing in the castle and helping a public event, or sitting in a back room and doing some labelling. It takes all sorts.
Okay. Final question to all of you. What is your favourite piece of art in the art collection? Katrina.
Okay, I'll go first. My favourite piece is by an artist called Christiana Herringham. She's a really cool lady. She was into the women's suffrage and campaigned and produced posters and postcards for that at the turn of the previous century. We've got 3 works by her in the art collection, but sneakily my favourite is an artwork by her in the museum collection. So we do still have some art in the wider collection. And it's a little watercolour sketch that she did of Quarry Street backs. So it's before Millbrook development, obviously. It's about 1910, 1905. And I just love her story. She was also, she's born here or went to school here, born here. And she was very influential in setting up the Art Fund. So she's a really important person for the preservation of art. And I just think she's a really interesting character. Very sadly, she died in a mental institution. And as a result, her artworks were really kind of forgotten for a while. But Royal Holloway has been doing a lot to promote her lately. And
Is it on show
love her
now?
Things. That one is not at the moment. They're probably in this room, the 3 in the art collection. We were hoping to send the Quarry Street one to an exhibition at Royal Holloway, but they ran out of money, so they didn't take it. But we were planning to. That was the idea. I know, it was such a shame. I was really looking forward to seeing it out there. But
James.
it will be out.
My favourite one was the one I've seen quite recently, was the post office in Shackleford. It was painted by Paul Brown in 1993, and it's a lovely scene of a sort of snow-covered post office all over the tracks. And I'm a big fan of winter. I was born in the winter, so I kind of feel like I got a connection with it. So those sort of scenes, and it looks very sort of Victorian-esque, sort of picturesque, and it's just one of the ones that sort of caught me as something I really quite like the look of.
Gemma?
So I'm a big fan of the Russell collection. I really like the 18th century. It's something that I studied for my undergraduate, and then I went on and did a master's, and I studied 18th century art. So I really like the Russell pictures. My favourite is Portrait of a Lady, which is almost kind of a social commentary on how women were shown at the time, how they were displayed, how they displayed themselves in portraits. It's very interesting to think about marriage and how people were showing themselves in order to be married. So I really enjoy Portrait of a Lady because I think it's a real commentary on women of the time who are very underrepresented in writing. So.
Okay, thank you very much for showing us the storage here. Katrina, James, Gemma, thank you.
Thanks.
No worries.
You're welcome.